So for Hispanic Heritage Month, we're going to look at Lourdes Villagomez. She is an artist that creates masks, creates murals, and paintings that all showcase different imagery from Hispanic heritage, and they all have one thing in common. They're very bright colors, and another thing, the shapes that she uses. So there are geometric shapes, and there are a lot of organic shapes and repetitive shapes and colors, and she does this in a way that almost looks like they are mosaics. And the other artist that we're going to look at is Jennifer Dabura, and she has contracts with brands like Converse, and she does different prints and advertisements and calendars and things. And her artwork is very similar in a way that it's a lot of color, and there's lots of different shapes and repetitiveness in some of them, but they all tell similar stories and have to do with some Hispanic heritage history. And I love her artwork because in similar ways to Lourdes Villagomez, her artwork is more cut and paste style, even though it's paintings. So that's what we're going to do today. You guys are going to choose something that you want to be the subject matter of your artwork. So for me, I'm going to do this moth right here. And so what I'm doing is I'm just trying to sketch it out as accurately as I can. It doesn't need to be extremely accurate as far as proportions go, but the closer that you are with proportions, the better. So here I am just adding in all of the little details so that I can know how many parts I'm going to need to cut out and glue down. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just cutting stuff out and seeing where I could get it to fit. It's often trial and error. So what you could do is maybe draw your drawing on a white sheet of paper and then maybe trace it out with like black marker or something. And then maybe you could get the colored paper to go on top and then trace them. Or maybe you just cut out a bunch of different little shapes and see where you can fit them. But what I was doing was trying to be a little bit more purposeful and was trying to just get things to fit how I needed them, and I would trim them if I needed. I would trace them to get the other side to be the exact same, and if that needed to be fixed a little bit, I would fix it. And so it was a lot of mirroring images since they are symmetrical. And here I just was folding the paper so that I can cut two out at the same time. And I don't know if you noticed, but I drew the circle right under that other circle so that I could get that circle to be the same size. And then here I folded it over, basically traced it with the scissors. And then here I am just like tracing it, but you can't do that. You have to fold it in half and then you can kind of trace it. And then when you cut it out and you open it, then it'll be the size that you need it. And so I just trimmed the top so it's a little bit more rounded. And so it's starting to come together. You just need to start figuring out what colors you want where and how you want to do it. So that part is totally up to you. And it's basically, like I was saying earlier, trial and error and trying to get things to fit. And what I'm doing is putting things behind things so that I'm not doing as much cutting. I'm just going to kind of glue things on top. And then I'm tracing it out again. And I'm just trying to get it to be both sides having the same shape and the same size and to be symmetrical. So here I am just testing it out and I'm like, whoa, that needs to be trimmed a little bit. And then I'm realizing, okay, that actually needs to be a different shape. And so I'm tracing that and tracing that part out so that I can cut that out and that they could be the same size again. And I know this is seeming repetitive, but you need to try and get things to look as clean cut, as purposeful, and as symmetrical as possible if you are choosing to do something like a butterfly or a moth or something that is actually, in fact, symmetrical. And so here I am just kind of trying to trace out the size that I need. And then I folded the paper in half so I could get two of the same exact shape. And I'm just really testing out like the size and shapes of things that I need, what colors I want to put where, and trimming things if I need to trim them. And so it's totally up to you how you want to do it. There are multiple ways that you can go about doing this. If you would rather kind of piece a bunch of little tiny pieces in and fill in the whole thing like a mosaic, go for it. That is up to you though, because it depends on which artist that you are choosing. And so I like this look for what I was going for, where it is all like each chunk is a singular color, and so it's not like a mosaic. But if you want to do more of the mosaic and cut all of the pieces into little triangles or little circles or little rectangles or little squares or a mixture of all of those, then go for it. For this part right here, I'm just trying to kind of size out how I'm going to do it. I fold it in half. I'm cutting them again so that they can be the exact same. And I'm really just trying to piece everything together to see if I'm filling it out properly and if anything needs to be bigger, smaller, and what other colors I'm going to need for everything else. And when you are choosing where you're going to put your colors, you need to be aware that when you put colors next to each other that are the exact same color, it does not look as good. It looks better when you vary the coloring so that two of the same color are not touching. It looks more purposeful, it looks more interesting, it looks more unique. So try to make it so that the same color is not touching another piece that's the exact same color. So what I'm doing here is I am just drawing on the paper and trying to make sure that all the shapes are going to actually be the right size and that they're going to match up together. And I'm messing them up because I'm not gluing them right now. And so I'm going back, I'm straightening them out, seeing what other color I should put where and what size I need. I'm folding it in half again so I can get two identical pieces and just testing it out, seeing if I like the placement of everything. And then I went and I got glue. And I don't like glue sticks for things like this. I would prefer to glue everything down using liquid glue and then using the tip of the glue bottle to spread it all out so that it's like an even thin layer, and then try and glue it down without getting glue seeping out the edges. And you really do not want to use that much glue. You want to use enough glue that it's all sitting down, but you don't want to use too much glue where the paper's going to get soggy, because glue is made out of water. Paper and water do not like each other. And when it comes to colored paper, like the paper I'm using, it's dyed. And so when water touches that paper or too much glue, sometimes you can get discoloration. So you need to be really careful. Also, if you are using a black background, the glue is very noticeable on the black background. Not so much so on white paper or colored paper. But I want you to notice that I'm using too much glue. You see it seeping out the edges and it's getting on the black paper. And so I'm trying to use less glue and hoping that this is better. But the glue that I just put down with that yellow paper, it didn't get spread out evenly. So it was not a thin, even coat. And so I want you to see at the very end of the video what that ends up looking like when it's dry. And I promise you, it is not as good as you would hope. So I want you to try and spread it out evenly so it's like a thin, even layer. And again, the reason that we are not using glue sticks is because glue sticks end up falling apart, especially if you plan on keeping the artwork for a long period of time, if it needs to be displayed or if it needs to stay up, because especially at schools, I'm speaking from experience, they don't keep the air on over the weekend. And so it gets hot, it gets humid, it gets muggy in here. And then what ends up happening is it all just peels apart. Or if you are gluing stuff like with collages where they're shiny, it ends up just pulling apart because the glue stick doesn't like to stick to the glossy and slick material. So the reason I'm cutting this out is because I realized that I did make a mess with the glue on the black paper. And if I was grading my own artwork, I would notice that I made a mess, and that's craftsmanship graded off right there. So I'm trying to just cut it out, and I'm going to put it on another paper and let's start over. So I got another sheet of paper and I'm realized that I didn't glue these little pieces on. So I'm glad that I noticed. And when you are cleaning up, make sure that you're looking at all those pieces and see if there's any that actually were supposed to be for your artwork or any that were supposed to be for a part that you missed for your background. So I'm just cutting out random shapes at this point to kind of resemble leaves and make them more organic shapes. And I'm just testing it out, and I'm like, I kind of like that. So I'm gonna cut them out and make them symmetrical. And so then I cut that out symmetrically, and I was like, that's too big. So then I'm cutting it apart, making it smaller as well, and trying to just cut things out, make it look a little bit more interesting, kind of fill some more of this black space, and kind of layer some of the colors. And so I'm cutting this up, making it a little bit smaller to fit right there, and just really testing it out. How do you want it? How do you want the background to look? How do you want the negative space, the positive space? Do you want there to be any negative space? Do you want there to be only positive space? So this is what it ended up looking like. As you can see the glue through it, and the glue made a mess still on that black paper. And that's just really not good craftsmanship. So you want to be really, really, really careful with the glue.